Lake District. This was one of the only proper school trips that I went on. And I only went on it because it coincided with my mum and dad's trip to Yugoslavia, which meant they didn't have to get anyone round the house to keep an eye on me. They left my brother to look after me once, but I ended up having to sleep in my dad's car due to the fact that all the beds in the house were being used by him and his mates and some women. My brother always been like that. After that, they either got me Auntie Nora to come around or I stayed at Joan and Tony's. They were friends of my mum and dad's who lived on the estate. I didn't like staying there because they had a really angry cat that used to scratch everyone. Right nasty little bugger it was. It was weird because we got through loads of cats because our house was on the main road. I'd always find them dead in the road on the way to school. My dad stopped buying them because he said we were running out of space in the garden to bury them. But Joan and Tony's nasty cat lived for years. I used to sleep on their sofa and be woken up by it sat on top of me. I had to sit there really still until someone in the house got up and persuaded it to move. It was more relaxing sleeping in my dad's car. Anyway, we went to the Lake District on a double-decker Manchester bus that the school had hired. Problem was, it couldn't take all of us the way to where we were staying because the roads were too small and the bus couldn't fit down them. So we had to walk the last 4 miles. Mr. Buckley pretended it was all part of the plan. He was a woodwork teacher. He wasn't at the school for much longer after the Lake District trip, as he hit some kid on the head with a chunk of wood. It was a rubbish lesson, woodwork, because there was never any wood to make anything with. I don't know where he got the wood that he hit the kid with. I remember one lesson where he gave me a plank of wood and said, "Make something." I just varnished it and said it was a shelf. I got a grade B for it. Waste of time that lesson was. We eventually got to the campsite. Now it was the turn of Mr. Morris, the PE teacher, to be in charge. He was kitted up to the nines in proper camping gear. He looked like someone out of the film Touching the Void. He'd made a list of camp rules, one being that we had to keep our area clean of any scraps of food that would attract insects. He said if we didn't stick to this, we wouldn't survive a week. He then made a big error. He announced that people with asthma could stay in the log cabin while everyone else should grab a tent. Everyone said they had asthma because no one wanted to stay in the tent, including me. All the teachers had to give up their beds in the cabin so the kids could fit in, apart from Mr. Davis, who also claimed to have asthma. There were only 4 kids who stayed in a tent. One was a lad nicknamed Pinball after the song Pinball Wizard, due to the fact that he had one of those built-up shoes that you don't see people wearing anymore. Apart from Elton John when he played Pinball Wizard live on stage. Pinball really did have asthma, so he should have had a place in the cabin. But he said he'd find it difficult getting up the muddy hill to the cabin. He seemed happy to stay in the tent, but Mr. Morris made a big deal out of it and was saying we could carry him up. I could tell Pinball didn't want to, because any fuss and just wanted to stay in the tent. That reminds me of a concert I once went to. It was the hip-hop group Public Enemy. I don't know why I went to see them, because they just rapped about political problems that I didn't understand. It was like the musical version of Newsnight. There was a bit of bother in the crowd. To try and control it, some health and safety fella came on stage and told us to all sit down. He made this request about 5 or 6 times, but there was still a few groups of people standing. He went on to say that if everyone didn't sit down, the gig would be cancelled and we'd be sent home. Some more people then sat down, until there was just a lad standing in the middle of this crowd of about 2,500 people. "You're going to ruin it for everyone unless you sit down," he shouted on the mic to the lad that was standing. The bloke on the stage ended up sending a security man to escort the lad out of the venue. I then saw the security man leave the lad standing where he was and make his way back on stage. Some words were exchanged, and then the health and safety fella announced, I understand the man still standing cannot help it as he's got problems with his legs and is on calipers. Let's have a round of applause for him. Like the lad at school with the big shoe, you could tell he just wanted the ground to swallow him up. Once we had our bags unpacked, Mr. Buckley took us all on a walk to find wooden sticks. I thought he was having us collect it to take back for his woodwork class, but it wasn't for that. He said that a walking stick is a good thing to have in the country to help you walk up hills and to beat down nettles and big weeds. He'd brought one with him that he found on another trip here years ago. He'd put loads of little metal badges on the front of it that showed off all the different places he'd been to with the stick. We'd been looking on our own sticks for about 20 minutes when Jamie Forbes cut himself really badly on some barbed wire. So Mr. Buckley sent him back to base. We got back about 2 hours later with our sticks and were greeted by Mr. Morris. He went apeshit at Mr. Buckley for sending Jamie back on his own. He was saying how he knew people that had fainted losing that amount of blood Jamie had lost. And he should have come back to camp with someone. He said they'd had a real problem getting Jamie to a doctor due to there being no phone or car. Turned out that Mr. Morris had flagged down a passenger by, who then gave them a lift to some doctor's surgery. He and Jamie won't be coming back to base, as the doctor had said it would be best if we sent him home so the cut didn't get infected. Mrs. Turner, the English teacher, agreed that that was the best thing for Jamie, and then quickly moved her stuff out of the tent and took Jamie's bed in the cabin. Everyone was called into the big tent at the bottom of the hill. This was where we went to eat and meet. Mr. Morris gave us the few first aid lessons that might be useful during our stay. He went on for ages about how it was as easy as ABC. He said ABC stood for airway, breathing, and I can't remember what the C was. He then announced that he was going to hire a car that would be there for emergencies. He went off to the nearest town while we sat around, rubbing down our sticks. Mr. Morris didn't come back that night. The next day was horrible. It chucked it down non-stop and everything was covered in mud. Everyone crammed into the big tent at the bottom of the hill. We were all bored, so Mr. Buckley got us to play that game where you have to eat 3 cream crackers in under a minute. We did this for about an hour. That's when Mr. Morris walked in. He went off on one straight away. "Whose idea was it to play this?" he shouted. "We must not waste food if we want to survive here." Mr. Buckley shouted back, "Never mind all that. Where have you been?" It turned out that he'd stayed over at a bed and breakfast in Kirby Lonsdale, and he'd have a problem finding a car for hire firm and had to get a vehicle brought to him from another town. It was a knackered old transit van. It was just as well as he got it though, because that night Richard, who was on the bunk bed above me, fell off and broke his arm and had to be rushed to hospital. Apparently everyone was up in the middle of the night due to Richard screaming. I slept through the whole thing. It wasn't until I woke up in the morning and noticed that Mrs. Stevens, the arts teacher, had moved out of her tent and into the bed that I realised he'd gone. We were only on day 2 and already 2 kids had been sent home. I wish I could sleep through stuff like that now. I can't remember the last time I slept well. In all the places I've lived, there's always been something keeping me awake. People having it away all night always annoys me. There's no need to be making so much noise, and there's no need to drag it out for so long. The end result is the same, so just get it done and get to sleep. The problem is, with where I live now, is seagulls. I don't know what they're doing in London. And if they're not making a racket, it's the street cleaner. I don't know how he makes a brush sound so noisy. After Richard fell out of his bunk, our time in the Lake District was pretty uneventful. Mr. Buckley's stick went missing. The rumour was that Mr. Morris had hidden it. If we'd been back in school, there's no way we'd be bothered about a stick going missing, but it just goes to show how dull the place was. I spent the rest of the trip rubbing down the stick that I'd found. I think that was the last bit of proper woodwork I ever did. I wish I was better at DIY than I am. A few months back, when Suzanne was away working, I thought I'd have a go at painting the window frames in the flat. I went to the DIY shop to buy all the gear. I get nervous in those sorts of shops, as I don't feel like I belong with the rest of the mob who go in them. They are proper men, who know what everything is in the shop is for, whereas I shouldn't be there. I have the same shifty look that I had when buying cider from Hugh Fay's supermarket when I was 13. I tried my best to look the part. I popped a pencil behind my ear and grabbed the paint and a brush. At the counter, the fella asked me if I'll be requiring a receipt, so I said yeah, thinking that would make him think that I'm in the decorating business and need it for me accounts. He got his young assistant to write up the bill while he added up what I had. He said, "Is that brilliant white?" I said, "Yeah, it's good stuff." "No, I mean the shade of it. Is it brilliant?" he said. The game was up. I'd ruined it. He now knew I didn't have a clue. I was an amateur at this DIY stuff, and both he and his assistant knew it. I then added some rubber gloves to the pile. I hadn't wanted to buy them earlier because it would have made me look like a bit of a ponce. But as we now thought that anyway, I thought I may as well be a ponce with nice hands. I went home and started painting the frames and realised that I should have got a smaller brush so I could get closer to the glass. I ended up doing all the main bits of the frame with one big brush, and then I chopped the brush down with a pair of scissors as I couldn't face going back to the shop for a smaller one. I learned nothing from the trip in the Lake District. In fact, I learned a lot less than most of the other lads, because I later found out that Susan Barrick was using her tent to show off inside her knickers for 10p a time. She went back to Manchester with a right load of change. My mum and dad had a good time in Yugoslavia though.